a lot of people look at it and say my vote doesn't make a difference. You know, too often I've heard that, and in too many instances, too many people believe that and exercise that. But my name is Alex E. Havisham, and I'm here to tell you that it's your responsibility, everybody's responsibility. It's your right, but it's also your responsibility. And that's a right that should not be taken for granted, because that's a right that make our country what it is. So I have with me today two people from the entity, the organization, the institution, the department that deals with electing, the Board of Elections. And, you know, this is something that's very, very near and dear to my heart, you know, and I encourage, it's a part of citizenship. You know, I'm proud to be an American. I love being an American. But a part of this love should be exemplified through my voting and my playing a role in what happens in government. And everybody has that right. I mean, you don't have to agree with people, how other people vote. You know, that's why this is called a democracy, you know, where in the majority rules. But if something is ruling that you don't like, then if you don't vote, don't you complain, because you too can play a role in that. This is a call to action.
Call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Havisham, and I'm excited. I'm excited about the possibility of imparting information about voting and voting rights and all of the particulars that are involved in the right to vote and how to vote and where to vote and all that kind of stuff. All that information is available and accessible. So I have with me today Mr. Mike Kaplan. How you doing, Mike?
Fine, Alex. How are you?
You know who's chairman of the Board of Elections. He's the chairman, as my granddaddy used to say. And I also have, I was excited, Mr. Netta Watson, who's the supervisor for the Board of Election. How are you?
I'm well, sir.
Okay, Mike, let's begin by telling us a little something about yourself.
Well, my name's Mike Kaplan. I'm third generation Baconite. Been here pretty much all my life. As a matter of fact, when I went to Lanier High School, one of my teachers right there, Mr. Havisham. And so if there's anything wrong with me, you can blame it all on him. But I got involved in the Board of Elections about 3 years ago when I was involved in a campaign and found out just how important of a job and important of a decision a vote is, and how sacred that vote is, and how it's important that our community have a feeling that the Board of Elections is handled well, handled properly, and everyone's vote does count.
Right.
Because as you mentioned, the right to vote is the most sacred right we have. We live in a great country, and we all disagree, and that's what makes us great. But the great thing about our country is the complete transfer of power, that's peaceful transfer of power. You know, we just had a transfer of power last year from the Democrats to the Republicans, and it's been a little contentious, but it's been peaceful for the most part. And the other part about our country is if you don't like what someone's doing, in 4 years you get a chance to vote them out.
Absolutely.
And that applies to state, local, and federal elections. And I agree 100% with what you said. If you don't vote, don't complain. You have to vote. We have to vote. We have to make our voice heard. And if you don't, you're wasting a lot of people's time that spend a lot of effort enabling you to vote. And so, in honor of them, you should get out and vote. It doesn't cost anything. We make it easy to vote. It's never been easier to vote. If you can't get by one of our polls, you can get an absentee ballot. If you can't get by to get the absentee ballot, someone can get it for you now. And you can mail it back in. So we have Saturday voting now. We have last election we had a secondary for the first time in Macon. We had a second polling location, which was down at the terminal station. We will be moving that this year to a different location. We're not sure where yet. I think we're looking at the Tubman Museum for our secondary polling place. We're looking at that now. And like I said, if we can do anything today, please get out and vote.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for serving, too.
My pleasure.
You know, I really do appreciate that. Ms. Watson?
Yes, sir.
I got your name right this time. Let's talk about the mechanics of the board. Let's talk about what you do, what your responsibility is.
Okay, it's our responsibility to make sure everyone in the community that wishes to vote registers, that we have the database with their information into it. The state of Georgia back in 2013 went into a unified voter registration system, meaning statewide, so we all have access to the same information. It also I make sure that we conduct every election that is to be held here in Macon-Bibb County, from your state, federal, to down to your local races. We make sure that those happen.
Okay, who can vote?
Anybody can vote. Anyone that is 18 years of age or older.
That's a citizen.
That's a citizen. That's a citizen of the United States, 18 years or older. That's pretty much a citizen 18 years or older. They have to be mentally competent.
Mm-hmm.
How about criminals?
Felons can vote if they have had their rights restored. That is so important, because a lot of the felons,
right,
after they've been labeled a felon, and they go through the voter registration system and they go through all the checkpoints, and they are no longer considered a felon, they can go and have their rights restored and re-register to vote and vote just like anyone else.
Right.
But they have to go through those procedures. So they need to, we need to try a better way to educate them, to let them know that it's just like anything else. You can go back and get it.
Just because you're a felon and you lose your right to vote,
yes,
doesn't mean you can't get that right back.
Okay,
right.
That's outstanding.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, so you need to register. Now, so as a matter of fact, when a young person turns 18, one of the first thing on his or her agenda should be to register to vote, because one has to be registered to vote, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Right.
Now how does one get registered?
You can register several different ways. Like Mr. Kaplan said, they have made registration and voting a lot simpler and more accessible, especially to the young people. Registering electronically appeals to the younger generation because they know how to get on there and do all that stuff. Same with registering. The state pushed out an online website a couple years back called the My Voter page. You can go on there and register to vote.
Is that the Secretary of State's
Secretary of
website?
State. You can actually click through via their website as well, and ours. We have the link on our Board of Elections website as well. You can register there, check to see if you're registered, find out where you vote, find out who your candidates are, ask for an absentee ballot application, check your sample ballot. All that information is in one checkpoint there now.
And there's an app now.
So,
for those who want to download an app on their cell phone, the Georgia's put out an app that you can download and pull it up and say, well, where am I supposed to go vote?
Yes.
And it'll tell you where to vote. It will tell you who all you're voting for and who's in your district and what precinct.
And speaking
there's
of
not an
tech-
excuse not to register to vote.
Right.
There's no excuse.
Speaking of texting while driving, the Google, once they push through and register, if you're in your car on election day, you just go right there and they show you right where
Give you
you
directions
need
on
to
how to
go.
get to your polling site.
Yes,
Oh,
directions
wow.
on your polling site.
It's got you got GPS on it that will take you
I
directly
think it's called
to the poll.
SOS or
SOS Secretary of State, and the app is in the form of the state of Georgia, and it's red and says Secretary of
if
State.
you go to the App Store, you
Yeah.
can find
Okay.
the Secretary of State's
Okay,
app.
okay.
Now, you do have to have a driver's license or a state ID in order to register on that site. I didn't want everybody get excited. That's a good thing, but make sure you have a driver's license or a state ID to register on it.
Let's talk about voting. Let's talk about percentages. It's and I don't know the numbers, and I know we had an election in Atlanta, we had an election in Alabama, but and I don't remember I'm completely baffled about this. But it's unheard of for 50% of the registered voters to vote.
Well, that's very high.
I know it. I know it's very high, but my point is...
We've had local elections I've been here where the turnout's been 17% in a non-federal election. Now, usually when you have your federal elections, the turnout is quite higher, much higher.
Yeah, but how much higher?
Usually in 50-something.
When we have our presidential elections, we here in Macon-Bibb County, We have a turnout of over 70% here
Okay.
in Macon-Bibb County.
Okay.
The statistics after an election are generally on the Secretary of State's website, and I didn't bring that
That's
with me
okay.
here today. But it's huge during that,
Okay.
that
Well,
time
let me
period.
say this. Since you said 70, okay, it ought to be 100.
Well, knowledge should
At
be
least,
100, but-
you know, 90, 95. Let me say this, Mike. What I'm trying to say is this. It makes no sense to me. You know, a lot of people complain and feel like they're not being treated right. And then when you're black like me, you know, because people died, you know, we didn't always
Die for the
have
you
this
to
right.
vote. Correct. I agree.
You know, I mean, it was a mess trying to get that right for African Americans.
And we're old enough to remember that.
Yeah, I am. I'm older than you since I taught you. So what we need to do is, what I'm trying to do is to encourage everybody, to vote. So you're telling me, so when is our next election? What comes up?
The next election we have will be in May of 2018.
That's correct.
As a matter of fact, I believe it's May 22nd. And that'll be for the nonpartisan local elections. So our mayor, excuse me, not our mayor, our, who's going to be running the local election?
We have a couple of water board seats, a
Right.
couple of school board seats here locally. And then, you have your governor's race that'll be on
Primaries
there.
for the governors.
Yeah.
It's the general election for the nonpartisan and the primary for the partisan. And the partisan elections will be held in November.
But now
Historically.
we aren't we now, since we consolidated a nonpartisan?
Correct. All the local elections, with the exception of tax commissioner and sheriff, and I believe one more,
Superior
are
Court.
Superior Court.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
nonpartisan.
They're nonpartisan
And
elections.
Solicitor General.
Huh?
There's just four.
Solicitor General.
And the Solicitor General.
Those are the four that
Which
are
means
nonpartisan.
that when it's nonpartisan, you don't have a primary.
There's no primary. You don't vote as Democrat or Republican.
You just go and vote, and whoever
Correct.
gets the most votes.
So when you go in, because they're federal elections and state elections, if you ask for a Democratic ballot or Republican ballot, that's what we're used to doing. On that ballot will be the same local elections. You can't vote Democrat or Republican because they're going to be Democrat and Republican primaries being held on that May 22nd day. And so you'll ask for a Democrat or Republican ballot, but on that ballot will be all the nonpartisan elections.
Okay, because
Because it's not Democrat or
everything is not.
nonpartisan.
There are elections, there are positions that are still partisan.
All your state
The
and
four
fe-
you mentioned, and
all the state
Okay.
and all the federal elections are still partisan elections.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, suppose a person really, kind of confused, then what would be the approach, to this individual, this citizen, finding out more about the voting rights and the election and things of that nature and registration? Should they just...
Listen, we have what I think is one of the finest Board of Election headquarters in all of Georgia.
Amen, brother?
Our city council, county commissioners, just moved us into a new place last year out on Eisenhower Parkway that is second to none. If you have any questions, you come out there. We have a staff of people that are willing to help, great staff. So if you have any questions, you call, you write, or you come by. It's pretty simple. Or you download the governor's app on your phone, or you go to the Secretary of State's website. If they need anything, they can call Janetta or just call out to the office and talk to one of our ladies out there. We'd be glad to help.
Right. Well, I was out there seeking some information, and Charlene was very, very helpful and very, very, very nice to me, and I was really, really appreciative. Now, when is the next? Now, do the mayor and the commissioners run at the same time?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you a key number. The day you have to register to vote.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
See, you vote on May 22nd, but the
For
deadline
this
to
year.
register.
Now, the next election is this year.
The next
on May
election is
22nd.
2018, May 22nd of
I mean,
2018.
18. Yeah.
And at that time, if you want to vote in that election, you have until April the 24th, I believe,
Yes.
to register to vote, period.
Okay.
So if you don't register by April 24th, you cannot vote in that election.
Okay, let me ask you. Keep that. Hold that right there. Now, what about purging? Does that still happen when you don't vote in so many elections. You know, I'm going way back, and I don't have this problem. I remember that. You may not remember this, but there was a time. You know, if you didn't vote in 1 or 2 years or 1 or 2 elections or anything like that, then your name will be removed from the list. Does that happen anymore?
Yes, the Secretary of State keeps up with when voters vote. And they send the list down to us so that we know who to take off the voter rolls. And that happens like once a voter is inactive for 2 consecutive general elections. So once you vote regularly, you'll always be active. When you go, the voter doesn't know when they're inactive, but an inactive voter can vote, and we know that. Then after they don't vote for 3 or 4 years, then the state starts to keep up with those voters, and then they develop the purge list, and then they send it to us, and then we take them off of the list.
Okay, you said an inactive voter can vote or
Yes,
can't vote?
if you haven't voted, say you voted in the president last year, then next year we have an election and you didn't vote again, you may become inactive then, and then you've got maybe another year or so before you get added to that list.
Okay.
So how does if someone's inactive, how do they become active?
To vote again. So if you
can
didn't
still
vote,
go vote.
if you didn't vote for 2 years, and
Well,
you
there's no
voted the
punishment
third-
for being
No.
inactive then, is it?
No,
Unless you go too long and they purge your name from the
Yes.
list, then you
Yeah.
probably have to re-register.
and you don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that. Just vote. It's
But
pretty
the long,
simple.
that's right.
Just vote.
The long and short of it all is
Doesn't hurt.
to just vote. Well, let me ask you this, and you may not know this, but how many registered voters do we have in
We
Bibb
know
County?
exactly.
Right now we have 90,280.
Okay, well, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it.
I'm sorry, 93,280.
Okay, just round it off. 94,000.
94,000.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay, and that's good. So traditionally, you know, although let's say excluding, you know, the presidential elections, you know, but see the thing that kind of bothers me is that we should be probably equally as interested or more interested in local elections.
No question.
I mean, it's okay to vote for the president,
Yes.
but you can't pick the phone up and call the president and say I voted for you because you're not going to reach him. But you can pick up the phone and call Virgil Watkins,
Correct.
you know, and whether you voted for him or not. But, you know, so my point is that one has the right to influence, you know, what happens to him or her and what happens to the community, you know, by voting, you know, by participating in the process. And then if you don't like, no reflection on you, Virgil. If you don't like what Virgil is doing, you know,
Vote him out.
you can vote him out.
We get that right.
You can campaign against him,
Absolutely.
but he's doing
You
a good
can
job.
run against him.
You can run against him.
Even
Let's
better.
talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
Let's talk about that for a minute. You don't really get involved in who runs.
No, we don't.
You don't encourage people to run. But if somebody does want to run, this is important.
Correct.
If somebody's looking out there and say, well, you know, maybe I want to run for a commissioner's seat, then that person can come to you and, you know, talk about, don't they pay the qualifying fee
Qualifying fees. And
to the board of it?
That's our part of it.
Okay.
We take their information, they bring their affidavits and everything, their qualifying fees all into us. But initially, if a candidate wants to qualify, they have to go through what was used to be called the ethics department, and now it has this long name of it. But we send them there where they can log on, get PIN numbers and things of that nature, and all their information is then kept with state ethics department. And that the state ethics department provides any information for them, what race you want to run in, what the qualifications are, and what you need to do to run in that race. Yes, and the affidavits are there. They can complete them, have them notarized, and bring them in. That kind of makes it quicker for us to process them. But if the call is initiated to me, I will tell them where they need to go to find that information.
Right. So if you want to offer yourself for office, then you know there is a screening process
Correct.
that one has to go, and then that's understandable because you know we want quality people running for office, and we want responsible citizens and responsible people running for office also. So we're going to talk a little bit more about voter registration and encourage people to voting more. Vote, not more, vote all the time when we come back. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
Netta Watson, election supervisor, and Mr. Mike Kaplan, chairman of the board of Elections. All right. Be right back. What'd you say?
Sure.
We're back. And, I don't want to be political, but there have been a couple of occurrences in recent times that definitely and emphatically show the importance of voting and going out to vote, and how voting has made a difference, and how people are making their minds up to be involved in what's going on in their community has made a difference. So I just think it's important that you listen to what we are saying, and not only should you listen, but you should canvass your neighborhood and your friends and your family and encourage them to get involved in the process. Because, there's educational power, there's spiritual power, there's economic power, but there's political power too. And the political power is embodied in the voting. So we encourage everybody to vote. And I just want to knock on wood in appreciation for these two individuals that we have here today, Mr. Mike Kaplan, who thinks I don't know how to say chairman. Who's the chairman of the Board of Elections, chairman, and Miss Janetta Watson,
Yes.
who's the election supervisor. And we're just trying to apprise the community, encourage the community to go vote, and then let the community know what's involved in voting. So you got some programs over there you want to talk about?
We've got some outreach programs that we offer to the community, where you can come in and just see me or one of my staff, and they would happily come out to where you are at your church or at your event that you may be planning or anything. The important time is to do it before the election and not once the election is already in process. Because once the election is already in process, you want the community to already been educated on what's on the ballot and where they need to go to vote, and make sure that they're registered. So we have those programs available. We have information guides in our office and lots of knowledgeable staff, as Mike said before, lots of knowledgeable staff that can give you any information that you need. And if it's something that we don't know, we would love to help you find that information out.
Thank you very much.
And I believe we would be willing to talk to any civic clubs or civic
Right,
organizations that
Absolutely.
would like us to come talk to them about voting and how to vote and where to vote anytime.
Outstanding, outstanding. What's this here about ambassadors? I mean,
Listen, we have a great program now that was started by the Secretary of State's office and has been Charles Coney, who is the deputy county manager.
Yeah.
And Janetta has been working very hard on this. And as you well know, the children are our future. And that probably scared you when you were teaching me. I imagine it did. but they are.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. And we have to come up with a way to get these kids involved in the process so they're used to it. Not getting out of school and never voting and never figure anything out about that. So they started this ambassador program, and we have it at every high school, pretty much every high school.
A lot of them.
A lot of them. We're trying to get into the public and private schools. It's a statewide program, and I'll let Janetta talk about it a little bit more because she's been so involved in it. But we have training programs. We have bring them out to the Board of Election for classes. They have elections at their school. They put on mock elections at their school.
Wow.
They elect officers. They get involved in the process of voting. So they get used to voting. And that's the main thing. You have to vote. I can't make it any more simpler than that. It's never been easier, in my opinion. One thing I will say we've tried to do, a lot of our precincts have been in schools, and Sandy Powell, Chairman Powell, has made it really a goal for her to get us out of the schools with all the crazies running around in this world. We don't want people to have free access to the schools. So we are moving out of some of the schools
Right.
and as many churches or other buildings as we can. And
Right.
I think we have 2 more locations that are moving out of the school for our May location,
Right.
for our May,
Right.
May election. But
Right.
please explain a little bit about the ambassador program because it's fabulous.
Sure. It's to build leadership for students. If you can get students involved in being a leader and going the distance or giving a little bit more, they're going to be better informed when they become an adult and get out into the world and learning things that you learn once you get out of school. But it starts with the student in their school. They build teams. It's up to them to get their team. We'll help them if they need help, but it's up to them to get their team. And it's just involving getting them civically engaged. They have ran elections in our office. They've come in. I've done poll worker training with them.
We hope to get them some of them working at our polls.
Yeah, we've done poll worker training with them. The Secretary of State rolled out their action program a few months back where the students could come and gather and see what the program entailed. So we have several schools. We've got lots of students on board. Charles Coney and I have been working really well to get the kids involved, and they get points as they go along. So last year, I can't remember which county it was, that was our first year. So it's getting out there. The kids are getting really involved. They're really excited. And it starts with the registration. They're learning about registration.
Wow.
Then they're learning about, okay, one of the things that a lot of the students aren't getting is when they move out of state, what do I do? Do I want to move my registration? Well, now you're 18 and you're considered an adult. That'd be your decision to make. So if they know ahead of time, well, when I get there, I need to register to vote, or they hear about elections going on, oh, I need to register to vote, they're already engaged in the process and know to go and research candidates and research things that have happened before. They're into that. So that's what we're working on. That's what we're gearing up for. And it's just been a short couple of months with them, but they've been a joy. It's a joy working with the students.
Mr.
Well,
Coney's
we're
got a
about out of time. Believe it or not, we're going to have you all back real soon. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Having interviewed Mr. Mike Kaplan, Chairman of the Board of Election, and Ms. Janetta Watson, Election Supervisor. You all keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Obviously, it's close to all of our hearts, and we want to see a measurable increase in voting and registration for the next election. And if you're not registered to vote, just go ahead. Give me the number out at the Board of Election.
478-621-6622.
478-621-6622.
That's it.
If you got any questions, call one of the able staff person at the Board of Election, and I'm sure they will help you. This is the call to action. I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Have a great Yuletide season.